Exercise 10.6, rational and radical equations and inequalities. We're really going to look at only one type of equation here, or one more type of equation in addition to what we already have. That is radical equations. Steps in solving a radical equation. We want to isolate the radical, meaning we want to get it all by itself. So just like when we solve a standard linear equation, we want to get x all by itself. In this case, we want to get the radical that contains the variable all by itself first. Once we do that, assuming that it's a square root equation, we are going to square both sides of the equation. This goes back to the inverse or opposite properties that we talked about at the beginning of this chapter. Addition and subtraction are opposites or inverses. Multiplication and division are opposites or inverses, just as radicals and exponents are inverses or opposites. Once you square both sides, that's going to get rid of the square root, and then we simply solve the new equation that we are left with. So looking at this example here, our goal is still to solve for x. But when x is inside a radical, what we first need to do is get that radical by itself. So I need to add the 28 to the other side. 12 plus 28 is 40. Finish getting the radical by itself by dividing by 5. And now once that radical is isolated, in this case, since it is a square root, we want to square both sides. Had that been a cube root, then we would cube both sides. If it was a fourth root, we would raise both sides to the fourth power, and so on. Whatever is the opposite of whatever the radical is. In this case, square both sides. When you square a square root, that just gets rid of the radical sign. On the other side, 8 squared is 64. Finish solving for x. We get x to be 68. Now, whenever you square or cube or to the fourth power, raise anything to, I should say, an even power, you introduce the possibility of extraneous roots. So we need to check the solution. So we're plugging 68 back into this equation and making sure we get something that's true. 68 minus 4 is 64. Square root of 64 is 8. 5 times 8 is 40, and 40 minus 28 does equal 12, so we know that this solution does indeed work.